So you want to learn how to carry on Mr. Fantastic? Well, you've come to the right place. Hi everybody, my name is Abby. Welcome to the video. I'm going to be helping you get better at this amazing Vanguard duelist hybrid known as Mr. Fantastic Reed, which is a wonderful addition to the game, or dare I say, fantastic. So let's not waste any time and get straight into it. Now, in his little ability page, there's a lot of word vomit. So what I'm going to try and do is actually break this down, make it a lot more easier to understand, and simplify it, so you can learn how to play Mr. Fantastic a lot easier. Starting us off with Mr. Fantastic's kit is his left click. So as you can clearly see, his left click is him throwing around these long, basically stretchy fist attacks, and these fist attacks do have cleave. So this is what it looks like on a single target. And then this is what it looks like if you start to move your hand around left and right? So look at that. You can hit multiple targets at once, being able to get some cleave in. So do be sure to try and move your camera, your reticle around in left and right sway, so that you can maximize the distance of your stretchy arms hitting everybody, right? So remember, like left sway, right sway, left sway, right sway. Keep that up, and that'll be a great way to do a lot of damage and build a lot of ult charge. Mr. Fantastic's first ability is the shift ability, where he basically turns into a big boy form, and in this form he's actually invulnerable and he can take a set amount of damage, and once he takes a set amount of damage, he can actually reflect that damage back into the enemy team. Now sadly, the damage itself is a set damage. It doesn't necessarily do a big, like for example, let's say you absorb the Iron Man's ultimate. It's not going to send back an Iron Man ultimate damage. It's just going to send back like about 80 damage, I think, at best. So that's something to keep in mind. The next ability for Mr. Fantastic is his right click. So this is basically where he throws out his arm and he grabs an enemy. Now there's a few things that can happen if you do that. The first thing is, when you grab an enemy and press left click, you're actually going to pull them towards you, right? So you can see that I used the ability, I kind of grabbed onto them, and then by pressing left click I can pull them towards me. However, another thing you can do is grab onto the enemy, aim at someone else, and press left click, and now you're gonna bash two people into one another. To be honest with you, in practice, this like bash them together is really not that useful. I wish if it did more damage, it would be a lot more useful, but in practicality, in real games, what I like to do is I like to grab the enemy tank, pull him into our team, and then start like beating him from there, right? So that's like really important, at least in my opinion, the way I would use it. Now the next part of Mr. Fantastic's kit is called the flexible elongation, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. This is basically where he grabs onto a teammate or an enemy, and depending on what you do, it does different things. For example, if I use my E, this is the flexible elongation, onto a friendly target, it's going to give them a shield, right? And if I'm not mistaken, the shield, it does stack. So you can clearly see that the shield has stacked, right? Which is very cool to think about, right? Now, obviously, as you can see, while it does say that I can give my teammate a personal shielding, when you go over to an enemy bot, it's going to show you damage. Now, what happens when you use damage? Well, you can take a wild guess. You fling yourself towards them and you do damage. That's about it, really. And yes, that's about it. There's really nothing else that overly complex about this. This ability has a very high skill ceiling. You really do want to make sure you use it very carefully. It's a very good tool in 1v1s, and it's also a great way in team fights to kind of turn around and keep your teammates alive. I actually like to use it on my tank. Let's say my tank is in front of me and he's taking a fight. I like to give him that extra bonus and then myself go in while my passive is building. And we'll talk about the passive in just a moment. Let's talk about Reed's ultimate, and then we'll come around to how to use this passive effectively. Reed's ultimate is called the Brainiac Bounce, where he leans up into the air, comes down, hits enemies with a big ball-like bounce attack. And each time he hits the floor, he'll slow anybody caught in the radius. And you can keep bouncing for as long as you want, as long as there's people that you're hitting and bouncing off of. So this is what it looks like in practice.
Fantastic!
See, we get like 2 bounces, 3 bounces, 4 bounces. There's nobody to bounce off, so the ultimate stops. Now we come to the final and most important part of Mr. Fantastic's kit that I'm going to talk about, is his passive. Now, if you see in the middle of the screen now, there's this passive that's beginning to build up, right? This passive allows Mr. Fantastic to enter basically his more tanky state. There is a very easy way to build up this passive quickly that I'll teach you right now. And it's really important to understand that you have to do everything you can to maximize your uptime in terms of keeping the passive up, because like Mr. Fantastic's strength is how quickly he can enter that big boy form, and do crazy amounts of damage, and just he turns into a tank, but it's very useful once you understand how to use it. So the easiest way to trigger the passive is when you're about to start a team fight. What I like to do is I play behind my tank, and I like to quickly charge them up with the passive, and then I go in on the enemy team. And by this point, you already have like 60% of the passive built up. So all you have to do is do a little bit of cleave here and there, and at that point you're hitting 100%. And when you hit 100 on the passive, you enter the chonky state, as I like to call it. And then in the chonky state, you can do a lot more damage and a lot more other things, right? So as you can see, when you enter the big boy state, the chonky state, the Mr. Fantastic state, I don't know what you want to call it, your abilities do a little bit more damage, you yourself do a little bit more damage. So that's always nice to know at the end of the day, right? Now, with that being said, that's the most simplest way I can explain Mr. Fantastic's kit. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to go on over to the VOD section, and I'm going to be breaking down a gameplay of Mr. Fantastic and trying to explain how to better use this character. But before I do that, guys, remember, this is a guide that's more akin to beginners and people new to the hero. We will have advanced guides and tips and tricks in the near future, so if you enjoy educational Marvel Rivals content, be sure to hit subscribe on the channel. With that said, let's go on to the VOD section. Okay, so here we are in the VOD section with Mr. Fantastic attacking on this map. And if you just understand this gameplay loop, you can just play him on attack and defense relatively the same way. Just on defense, make sure not to overextend and play around corners a lot more. Is you really do have to kind of apply the logic that you are kind of your team's tank, but not really at the same time. So you have to learn how to balance it and maximize your potential to get the passive quickly built up, and then go in with your tank form. So you can see over there already, I was able to quickly build my passive by farming a lot of people with my hits, and then using my elongation to build the passive up even faster. We went in and we quickly deleted like the enemy backline, and then we were just able to really easily secure the point. Now over here, I remember I could hear a Hulk. I kept out the eye for him, that just in case he tries to recontest the point. And then I'm playing like I'm a main tank. I'm just trying to take space, maintain my presence, and just keep my passive uptime high, make sure I'm distracting the enemy, like giving my team a bit of space, right? Because if you don't understand the fundamentals of tank, you're not going to have a good time on Mr. Fantastic, right? You're not going to have a good time. And so again, over here, I get pressured a lot. What I do is I turn around and I use my elongation on my team to not only move away from the fight, but also to give my teammates like, the passive shielding. So again, you just have to know where to be, when to be there, and why. And that's going to take a lot of practice unless you're a tank player that understands how to control, space and positioning. So I do play a lot of tank. I also play a lot of strategist. So, I just have the skill set needed to understand how to dominate with this character, right? So then we just kind of walk in over here. And one of the best things about Mr. Fantastic is his HP bar can, most of his abilities give him passive shielding, right? So his HP bar starts to grow and grow and grow even further, which allows him to, like I said, basically just turn into the tank that he is. So you can see over here, I have about 800 HP, and then when I'm going to use my ultimate, I'm going to use it when I have the 800 HP, because Mr. Fantastic's ultimate can get easily screwed over because he's very, very squishy if you use the ult without having the extra tanky HP. So do be sure not to use the ultimate unless you're really, really tanky, right? So make sure you have like at least about 700 to 800 HP, then use the ultimate and go in, because you can get melted really quickly. Your movement is very predictable, very easy. So the rest of the gameplay loop is relatively fairly simple. We're applying our cleave damage, we're applying that AoE damage, turning into the big boy, applying pressure to the enemy in any way we possibly can. Iron uses the ult over there. I sadly couldn't catch it with my reflexive body, or whatever the ability is called. I just wanted to try and catch and absorb the ult and reflect it, but sadly, he did aim it away from me into the wall, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Over here, we're just trying to extend the duel with the magic, make sure she can't get the flank angle into my backline, and kind of regrouping with my team over here. The enemy team is beginning to push in really, really well. Sadly, we're feeling the pressure here quite a bit, but again, maintaining our composure, maintaining frontline presence, applying pressure where we can. Now, Darkchild kind of walks in on us over here, which is not good. Magic's ult is very, very good. It's one of the few ultimates that can really make Mr. Fantastic feel some pressure. I'm able to survive it. Thankfully, my healers behind me were able to kind of keep me alive through that as well. So big shoutouts to them. Over here, this is a really rough situation. I'm trying to take space again, absorb damage, but thankfully, my Punisher and my Storm are able to get some picks here. So beginning to walk forward once more, taking the space that we need. They do use their invisible boundary from Invisible Woman. Oh no, that was ours. Sorry, the replay viewer, because it's red, It's sometimes a little bit difficult to tell. So we're walking up, we're holding the space over here, and the enemy team is walking back up again, and I do overcommit a little bit here slightly. I did turn around to see where my teammates were, but I got a little bit too cocky, and sadly, like as you can see, I was trying to turn that corner, and you know that I couldn't. I miscalculated my positioning, and I kind of got caught. So you know you have to be so careful. You have to play around your corners very carefully. So again, over here, what the aim is now is to win this game. I need to quickly build my passive shielding on my health, so I can be tankier. You know, give my teammates, you know, their own shielding where I can give them, then start just applying the big damage, and that's exactly what's happening. I got 752 HP. I'm going to start using my ultimate. I really don't want to let this Black Widow set up and get the sight lines, so just applying the pressure where we can, and moving in from over there. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you dominate with Mr. Fantastic. I wouldn't necessarily say he's probably the flashiest duelist out there, because he's kind of like a tank duelist hybrid, like a Vanguard duelist hybrid, but you can 100%, you know, take over games with him, because sometimes people don't realize that they'll feed into your big elongation, you know, make you reflect that damage, make your passive build up quickly, and then you can just walk in with your team. Now, I will still say that at the end of the day, this is still a damage dealer, and arguably speaking, you still do want to play him in that area where you're playing him as a damage dealer and not necessarily as a Vanguard. So hypothetically speaking, the best way to play him would be to start running him in a composition that does have existing two Vanguards. So like, you know, characters that work really well with him, at least in my experience, are characters that can kind of walk with him. So mostly like brawl based characters, so like Thor, you know, Doctor Strange. These are characters that like to take the frontline brawl a lot more and then walk up into the enemy. So they're very good to have for Mr. Fantastic, because they can kind of divide the damage that's being spread across them. These are just some things to keep in mind with Mr. Fantastic. Again, I'm trying to keep these guides a little bit more beginner friendly. So remember, the best way that I can advise you for Mr. Fantastic is, yet again, is maximize your uptime on your passive shielding, maximize your presence around utilizing corners and taking space and giving it up when it's appropriate. Easiest way that I can summarize that is, if the enemy is moving in on you, you know, start to pull back a little bit. If you notice that you're putting more pressure and they're pulling away, then start to walk in. So these are just some advice from Mr. Fantastic. Everybody, if you would like a more advanced, in-depth guide for Mr. Fantastic, do let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to do more. Now, with that being said, we'll see you in the next video.